anybody that don't know me, I'm Nancy Kwan, and I'm the Director of Digital Marketing here at Bubblebox. So we're a Salesforce consulting partner helping marketers and organizations use Salesforce to bring in their ideas to life through technology. So this could be anything from Marketing Cloud, Sales, Service, Interaction Studio, Datorama, and also Tableau, just to list a few. But for today's purpose and the topic, I'm not going to be speaking at a platform specific level, as I know a number of attendees are using different systems, okay? I'm actually excited to kick off today's session. I've had a number of conversations with many marketers across the landscape. So the reason why you're here, there's going to be two areas that I'm going to focus on today. So the first one, many of you guys I know have signed up and have been asking a couple of questions, and it was all related to Apple's mail privacy protection. But there's a second feature I want to call out, and it's actually called Hide My Email. So I know many of you guys are wondering, like, what is this? So I'm going to go over those over the next couple of slides for you. Okay. So now on my screen, in the video, I like doing these things a little bit interactive. So on the left, you see a little video. You'll see how easy it is for Apple users to take back control of their privacy. So I know some of you guys, you have your videos turned off, but I know some of you guys might be reaching your phone right now wondering how the heck is this enabled. If you look at your Apple and your Apple devices, you go into the settings, then you see a feature called Mail App. When you go into that, there's the option to turn on your privacy protection from there. So this is a feature that was rolled out back in September of 2021. And essentially it's built in on new Apple devices and operating systems. So if you hear anything like iOS 15 or the new operating system that Apple rolled out called Monterey, that's what we're actually talking about. And since September, Apple is slowly phasing in and rolling it out to the older operating systems during their updates. Now you're probably wondering, well, hey, Nancy, what is mail privacy? So when mail privacy protection is enabled in your mail app, it's actually a feature that preloads all your email content. So this includes the open trapping mechanisms that a lot of us marketers are using. I know we all put them there, so let's acknowledge that we probably all have it on our emails. But before, what happens is when mail app has this mail privacy protection turned on, it's actually sending a false trigger that makes us believe as marketers that your email was actually opened by the recipient, okay? So you may still be wondering, well, what does this do to us? So for marketers with this feature turned on, this preload appears as an opened email, even if the person doesn't open it themselves. It is going to be very, very confusing for us. So this open data essentially becomes masked, meaning it's going to be impossible or nearly impossible to identify which Apple users open their email, when they open it, where they open it, and if they even open it themselves. And I know a lot of us used to rely on this open rate metrics. So this is where I want to draw attention to the marketers in the room. I know there's a couple of you guys just based off the registration. If you're currently doing campaign reporting and you're reporting on open rates as your metrics, know that this is going to be skewed and your reports will appear inflated. So you might, I know there's some people here, you might have that split moment where we're like, awesome, our open rates are now going, it's going up and this is a great thing. Well, in reality, it's not. And I sit on a number of marketing forums, especially email marketing conversations, and there's already companies, because of their audience base, has already started sharing their experiences and already seeing up to about a 75% increase in their open rate compared to what they normally trend at. And because this has been rolled out in September and you're kind of wondering, well, I haven't seen any impacts to our reports, remember that iOS 15 in Monterey, it's being rolled out. So it's going to take a couple more months before all Apple users accept and update their iOS, or before Apple forces the OS to update automatically on their own. The other piece that I have here is around another feature that's connected to my mail privacy, is people have the opportunity, it actually turns on, enables Apple users to hide their IP addresses. So if you're kind of wondering what that is, normally with your IP addresses, it enables us to see users online or their web activity. And what happens with that feature turned on is we don't have the ability now to trace back to them or their physical location. So something to keep in mind if you guys do a number of mobile location based tracking. I've also seen this in the past. Say, for example, I've seen organizations use anonymous location information to target their audience, but now you won't have that same visibility if you're not validating it through other data sources that you're currently connecting. So I know there were a couple people, I did quickly check on the registration. There's a couple people who were asking about what type of metrics, if we no longer have open rates available anymore, what should we be looking at? I will be addressing those questions later on in the slides. And also there was another question to go, how do we do this? What type of tools are available to better understand your impacts? I'll be talking about that in the next couple of slides as well. But before I do that, the other piece that I did touch on a moment ago was related to the second feature I really want to draw my attention to your attention on, and it's called Hide My Email. So I see more conversations around MPP. What does that look like? A lot of discussions in the marketing community, but I'm not seeing as many conversations around Hide My Email. So again, I'm a visual person here, so I purposely set up a video clip for people who are curious to see how does this get turned on and the impacts. So if users have Apple, this is an area where when people are creating their Apple ID, so when they're logging into their new device, or maybe they're creating a new iCloud account, this feature is pretty much automatically asked to the user to indicate whether they want to hide your email. So think of it, I like to put it this way, think of it in this way to understand impact. So Hide My Email is a service that lets customers keep their personal email address private. So that's whether they're creating a new account, especially if you're a company that has apps and you require somebody to create an account and log on to your company app. It could be maybe they're signing up to a newsletter online. They have ability to create this this kind of like a temporary, like this other email that we as the company will see. And then there's another one is sometimes people will send emails, but they want to still hide their email. They don't want the end user to know what email they're actually sending it from. This is what Hide My Email does. And the other element that I noticed that there isn't a lot of conversation. The Hide My Email does create like this mask email address. But if you, the marketer to the business, are sending emails to that email address, is essentially what it does is it's like a forwarding mechanism. So this user has the ability to forward from their Hide My email account to the actual email that they probably tend to use. So if you're, again, curious, there's just that two ways. I've made a note there. If people are signing up to Apple or going through their iCloud, ability to set up their these Hide My Email accounts. So with that, I know I just kind of like ran through that. I do want to take a quick pause here. And there's a couple things as you're listening to this. This is what I want you to think about, especially and put it in the perspective of your current landscape. So whether you're within retail, whether you're in fin, if you're using, say if you're using an email as your unique identifier, and we think about the different touch points where we may leverage that email as a unique identifier to that person. Imagine what will happen if the Apple user has now created a new Hide My Email. I know that's now a bit of mouthful, but think of the impacts from that journey perspective. You know, whether you're trying to acquire a new customer, whether you're trying to nurture that lead, whether you're trying to see if the person is making a purchase, or maybe they're signing on as a guest purchaser, because I see that often in retail. And then I know in many aspects, there's also times where, say, for example, you've gone through the first part of their journey, you're starting to acquire these prospects and you're starting to convert them to customers. Now there's the other end of the funnel. You want to start pushing them through the onboarding journey, getting them to understand a little bit more about your brand. You're an organization where you want to encourage them to sign on to a portal, or maybe you have an app on your phone. Like I know a lot of fins here, we have our apps on our phones where it's, enables people to update their information and more so, submit their claims. A lot of the times, marketers may use the email as identifier to send signals. A lot of times marketers may use the email as identifier using signals like open to determine that next best action. So that's something I want you guys to keep in mind, that this has more legs and impacts than just the marketing department. And maybe what I could do here is I could just kind of continue using this video that I set up here, just to kind of talk through the scenario. So here, let's say that I'm the user. So me at Bubblebox, I have an email account, nquan at Bubblebox.cloud. I don't mind sharing it with you guys. You guys could email me anytime. But essentially, I, the user, with nquan at Bubblebox.cloud, I've created my email account that is this hearts.waster0x at iCloud.com. Now, here, my next question is, are we actually going to be putting the right email and the right user into the right journey or not if the an email account is no longer available to be seen? Do we know when we're communicating to the prospect or your customers at the right time and with the right message? So this impacts that I really, really want to draw attention. Why I really included this section into today's session was that this doesn't just impact the marketing team. This has also impact to other areas of business. So to even just think about, like if we don't know if we're getting our message across to our customers, a lot of times marketers, we create messaging to try to reduce the operational, improve the operational efficiency within our business. So there's a lot of message that we used to push out to our audience to reduce maybe a call time because they could find it in an email and find our website. But now we no longer have that visibility. So will this potentially impact your call center? Will this potentially impact your sales department? Will this potentially impact your service? So I just want to draw that to your attention. Just kind of have that running in your mind. The other piece I'm going to walk you guys through is the impact. And I remember with the first time I started digging and really starting connecting with other people around the world about what does this look like? What does this mean for marketers and businesses? I was actually, it was no shock, but it's still a big shock when you find out that globally, there is over about 50% of users that use Apple Mail. So this is stats. I looked at a number of reports from Litmus through reports that were run from Accenture to demand gen reports that was really validating that this is actually, depending on your audience and your industry, could have a significant impact to how you communicate and engage with your audience base. But I always want to draw this back and keep you guys to remember that this only impacts Apple users and not non-Apple users. So if people are using like Google, their Gmail or their Yahoo or Outlooks, those people, those subscribers base won't be impacted through this change. The other thing that I want to draw attention to that will have an impact is, like I said a moment ago, you'll no longer be able to accurately target campaigns or segment subscriber base based off when an Apple user last opened your email, or if they're hiding their email. And then the third piece that there's an impact I want to draw attention to, because I know there's a lot of, I've done it before through different organizations, different campaigns that I've worked on, is usually you're probably optimizing your email marketing strategy through optimization or test plans. And the first one that really comes to mind that pops up to go, definitely if we're impacting open rates, if we were doing testing based off subject line, that will again definitely change what we know about those subscribers that are currently using Apple. The other two that might not come to awareness right away is actually send time. So I know one of the things I've done in the past before is trying to make sure that I'm sending an email at the optimal time where a reader may actually open that email and then either read the email and then click through. So there was always a lot of testing to go for my audience base and different segment. Is it better to send it, say, at 11 a.m. or maybe it's better to send it at noon or 6 p.m.? Well, now because Apple has this mechanism that's false triggering the open, that open time won't be to the true subscriber. It's actually set to when Apple's triggering the change. So that's something just to be mindful of as you guys start moving forward. And then the last piece here, I wrote in open personalization. And what I really mean to that is I'm speaking to any content that rely on location data. So if you're a customer and you're hiding your IP, it'll be a challenge to start pushing out from, like, I see this more often from a retail base. Like I know, Josh, I saw you mentioned earlier that you do retail, and I don't know if you guys are doing this right now, but this also will start changing how you're able to communicate and target this market if you don't know where they are. And this is usually tied to, say, for example, maybe there's a certain retail store that you're trying to do a special promotion, only that location will get it, and the people in that perimeter. Well, that's going to start changing now, because we don't really know if, if you're targeting, Nancy, who might be living in, I live in North York and Toronto in Ontario, but once I turn that on, you won't know that I am in North York, Toronto, to be able to target, to tell me to go to my closest store to take advantage of a promotion. And then the other one that from a retail base, I think might be beneficial, Josh, for you. I don't know if you guys do this, but there's a lot of times retails will use countdown timers. So usually that's a way to create a sense of urgency. So again, because the mechanism is set to when Apple is, false opening their email, that's going to skew your timers that you're probably putting on your sites or also within your emails as well. And then the last thing that I do want to call attention to, and this is, I recently had done a session about don't set it and forget it email marketing. This is a great opportunity for all marketers to really revisit your existing re-engagement campaigns. So perhaps you would trigger an automatic re-engagement campaign based off an unopened email. Well, now you don't know when an Apple user does not open your email. So if you have existing email journeys, depending on a subscriber's action of opening an email, revisit. I highly encourage you guys to take some time to revisit your automation in your email journeys to determine whether you're whether you require to create a separate data extension that's really only containing the Apple users, or maybe you need to create an email subscriber base. So then this way you're not relying on those false opens. I know some of you were kind of asking about like, well, what metrics then? Well, the next one, of course, that will give you a little bit more insight if you're doing email marketing will probably be that click-through rate. Knowing what people are clicking on will become a very powerful metrics in the email marketing funnel for you guys to take a look at. So what I'll do over the next couple slides, like I know this may be a lot of information to absorb, but one of the things I highly recommend, I know because there's a lot of marketers in the room, I want to put emphasis about starting the conversation and asking questions to your teams. Like, are they aware that this is happening? Do they have a plan in place? And what is that plan? My whole thing is, by not asking these questions and just being open about it, we're actually going to be doing ourselves a disservice. So if you're kind of wondering, well, what questions should I be asking? What I would highly recommend is, before we just kind of jump in and just kind of start doing, I actually have a couple of things I would suggest for you to look at. And really, let's kind of take a step back. So one of the questions I would ask immediately if you're sending out emails is, do you know what your email deliverability rates are? For the people who aren't marketers in the room, essentially what that question is asking is, here we have a subscriber base where we're sending emails to, and we know we're firing these emails out. The email deliverability rate is actually a validation to go, how many of those subscribers are actually getting your email in the inbox, in their actual inbox, or is it actually just kind of sitting, essentially sitting in this cyber, world wide web? It's just kind of sitting in this mystery. And I'll talk a little bit more to why that's important in the next couple of slides. The next question is also going, well, what percentage of your audience uses Apple? This again will help you start begin to prioritize the impacts to your organization, the business, and what you guys, it will essentially become the driver of what you guys should start considering and to assess and validate. The other question I would also ask, because I was talking about that in the previous slide about the email unique identifier, I would start asking the question, what are all the customer touch points that you currently use and interact with that uses email as the identifier? List them out, see where you could potentially get the impact from there. And then the other couple ones I want to just call out really quickly is, just don't just think of that this is going to only impact your marketing acquisitions and your retention campaigns. Let's start thinking that this actually may have a greater impact. So some of the questions I would suggest asking is, do you have any transactional emails that are being triggered? What are the times when people are giving you their emails? Look at that, and then also look at your conversions and your funnels, and really start monitoring. Because of this rollout, some of us may not see this impact happen immediately. It might just start to phase in depending on your audience, the type of people that you currently target and go after. So I would just kind of ask those questions, keep those at the top of your mind. And then what I'll do in the next couple of slides is just walk over 5 key areas. This is just to help this is essentially how I would navigate around it, and really be able to stay focused, okay? So one of the things I would highly recommend is focusing on actual metrics. And I know there's a number of you guys did ask that question of like, what should we be focused on? So my main tip here is don't get caught up on those vanity metrics such as open rates. Because if you don't know the main thing is, if you don't know where to start, I do have another article. And just so you guys know, this video will be essentially triggered out with an email to you guys for you guys to watch the playback, but I'll include an article that talks about how do you set yourself up for success between vanity and versus actual metrics. So you're focused on metrics that will move you guys forward. The other piece tied to actual metrics, and that is correlated, is be proactive and I would strongly suggest putting together a content strategy. A content strategy that inspires your users to take actions based off effective email content. And this is really an indicator. It gives you an idea, because if people are clicking your content, it most likely means that you are connecting and communicating with your subscribers. The other thing is that's tied to actual metrics that I'll talk to you in 1 second, is really focus on also. Don't just stay focused on your email campaign reporting. Look at it from a holistic standpoint. Take a look at web traffic. Take a look at your heat maps on your website, your click maps on your website. Even look at things such as your unsubscribe rates and use those as indicators of marketing success. So I know that was probably a mouthful. You're probably going, oh, I'm still trying to piece it together. So some of you guys who do know me, I'm a bit of a storyteller. So I purposely put up here on the screen this little example. And I think Josh, I know you're from retail, but view it as I go through this as if it was like a cart abandonment. I think that would use the concept in that perspective, and you could probably still do the same thing. I know there's a couple of fin serves here. So this is where I want to put a little bit more emphasis from that perspective. So based off the question, I knew a lot of people were focused on that open rate. So what I did was, on the right side of this image here, which goes email nurture campaign, I was getting the impression that, you have an understanding of how many subscribers you're sending to your emails. How many subscribers you're sending and the emails that you're sending to. You have an idea of your open rates and also your click-through rates. So right away, typically you would probably be comparing it, whether it's month over month or year over year. You probably start to see, based off your past results or your benches, whether there's going to be an impact. So in this example, in the email nurture campaign, when when the person deploys that email, you send it out to 10,000 subscribers, great, no big change there. But the thing that really caught our eye is the person who is looking at this report, and now they're seeing an open rate of 75%. Well, that seems odd, especially if you look right beside it. Your benchmark or your year to year, or maybe your month to month percentage was only coming in at 25%. I purposely made it I exaggerated that just to put emphasis to show like that becomes your flag to go, there's something is looking off. But this is where you really just need to start monitoring over the next couple months of these upcoming changes. And then the other piece I have here, of course, is that click-through. So here in this example, not a big concern. Like, yeah, it's at a 2.5. It's not to the norm. You always want to focus on increasing your click-through rates. But I just used that as an example of that's probably what, based off the questions I was being asked, was probably trending, and what an example would look like. And where we want to put more focus and where I want to go, hey, let's start as marketers. Let's get even, let's really start zoning in on not just the email component. Let's start looking past that. So what happens after the pass of the click-through? So on the left side, this is where I've created the, I'll use for this example, I'll call it the loan application funnel. So we know based off the X amount of people that clicked through the email to the website, we'll again start to see another conversion funnel that we need to keep a lens and an eye on. And here, at the very top, these are people who are clicking through, they land on our website. Great. The numbers should roughly align, making assumptions, people aren't just accidentally thumb clicking. And then we start going through the funnel. As you go down, the next step was how many people started the loan application. The next step underneath that is how many people completed the application, and so on. And when you look at this and you have your funnel, or in this instance, a loan application funnel, and you know how you're trending over month or year over year, I would actually right away draw my eyes to why are we all of a sudden decreasing, either month over month or year over year, decreasing at that step when people, so we show here, you see that number, an arrow going down where it's decreased 25%, what shows there how you're comparing it. So I'll use an example, month over month, we're seeing a decrease of conversion through that step of 25%. So if I was looking at that, I would actually go, well, hey, as a marketer, there's opportunities. Don't see it as negative, see it as opportunity. And this is where we get better with our metrics and our marketing engagement campaigns. And there's really two areas I would actually look at from this standpoint. When I see a large conversion drop in that instance, I start taking a look to go, hey, first opportunity, could we actually create a re-engagement campaign at that point? Because we know at that point, somebody has taken action, they start the app, and most likely you probably set up in a way that you could, who has started the application, and then be able to send maybe a re-engagement campaign to get people to come back. Maybe they've, sometimes I do it. I have squirrel brain, and I walked away maybe to get some information to come back to fill the form, and I just got distracted and aborted the form application. So that would be one area that I would actually look at trying to create in terms of leveraging actual metrics to create more marketing opportunities. And then the other element here is going, it's a loan application. So we know that we were trying to get them through another, let's call it, it's not an email. So you're trying to get them to complete the application. So I would actually look at opportunities to optimize your application, and getting people to go through that process. So this could be anything from, are you only encouraging people to fill out one long form, and are they aborting it because it's one long form on the website? Or are there one form, but there's too many steps? And this is where, as marketers, we tend to forget. We put so much energy and focus on the top end of the funnel, where we're trying to get people through the end of the loan start application, that we forget that there's opportunity for us to optimize the customer's journeys that could potentially increase additional lift. And so, are we putting our resources and our time in the right areas? So that's the other recommendation I would actually put there. So re-engagement campaign, and really put together a strategy on all the, instead of focusing on test optimization on a subject line, maybe we should put some marketing resources on supporting the testing and optimization of a loan application form. So Josh, I know that was more from a Fins perspective, but use that concept even from like a cart abandonment. It would use the same type of design or modeling to be able to get you guys through that. The other piece that I would suggest doing to move forward with some of this change is actually tied to segmentation and list cleaning. So in terms of segmentation, I would actually start with separating out all your users that currently use Apple and currently are on the iOS 15 or the Monterey operating system, and really split them out from the other, like the Yahoo mails or the Outlooks or their Gmails. Just make sure that that segment and that audience base is not skewing your overall metrics. So you want to be able to keep that clean. And essentially anybody that is on the non-Apple segment, you could keep them on the same journey. There's less concern. Right now, we're more focused on, we need to get a better grasp of what these Apple users are. And if you're kind of wondering, again, I know this was a question I got asked when I was talking to a couple of people, even on our team, about it. If you're wondering how to do this, and is it even doable to figure out who on your subscriber list is an Apple user, I will say this: it is doable, but it's done differently for each email platform. So whether you're using Marketing Cloud or Pardot or Oracle, whether you're using MailChimp or SendGrid, there's different ways to be able to segment this out by device type and give you a little bit more visibility. But there's also something I want you guys to be aware of. That feature to be able to do a report on a device type. If you don't see that you have that feature, it could possibly be that you're on it could be that it's your license that's causing that. So and when I say license, view it as like maybe it's the plan type that you currently are signed up on that may not enable you to do it. Now, if that's the case, there are still workarounds around it. I know a couple of you guys were asking me questions about, well, what tool could I use to figure out who these Apple users are? If you don't see it in your email platform, there's tools such as, it's called Litmus, and there's, I think, Email on Acid does it as well. So play around with it. I think both of those do have like trial runs. Just kind of poke around and see what you could find there on it. But that's another two. There's probably more, but those are two that I know off the top of my head that could enable you guys to do audience reports based off device type if you don't see it automatically in your existing plan. And that's kind of like, I forget who I used, but on the screen, it was one of those reports that I just kind of did a rough poll on to see what does that look like from a demo audience I was playing around with. And then the other thing I would say that's connected to segmentation, list cleaning, don't view your old data as it's gone. Use your old data and use the remaining non-Apple segments as a benchmark, or even view it as for your current Apple segmentations. Use your pre-mail privacy protection data from Apple users as a benchmark, because hey, if we need to figure out what that impact is, start with something. It's better than nothing is one of the recommendations I would always say. And then I have here, you're probably wondering, well, what the heck, Nancy, why are you talking about list cleaning here? Do you know what? If we're already looking at segmentation, better understanding our subscriber base now with all these changes, and due to the false opens, one of the things I want to draw attention to is we sometimes will have a very large email base, right? So due to the false opens, indirectly, it's actually hiding our unengaged subscribers that might be on our subscribers list. So if you haven't seen a big shift in your open rates right now, I would take it now as an opportunity to put a plan into place to start cleaning up your email list and optimizing your email deliverability over time. So that's one thing I would definitely put on, especially if you're not seeing any type of fluctuation. Now, I know I just even said it right now. You're probably wondering, well, what's email deliverability? So this is where I go, hey, start with checking your email deliverability rates. Again, this is going to be different for different platforms and how it displays. But this essentially enables, it gives you an idea of how many email addresses aren't even hitting or even getting into somebody's inbox. So start with that. Start with your list cleaning. Any emails that aren't even going into the subscriber's invoice, it typically would do an output. So what I would recommend is find that report and just get rid of it. They're not even getting your email, so why even have it within your subscriber list? It actually just falsifies how big your subscriber email base is, which is won't be beneficial to you. And then there's another one. This is where you can get, sometimes you might be wondering, well, I've already cleaned out the list, but hey, now we have this mask ID or hide my ID. This is where, hey, connect with your other business units. And I highly recommend this. So connect with your call center departments, connect with your frontline teams and or your customers, your CSRs, your customer service reps, and get them to help while they're having conversations with your customers, get them to confirm and update their email addresses. So it wouldn't shock me that a lot of people will create these mask emails through this Hide My Email, but there's a lot of times once they've instilled confidence and trust, this is where if they're already making a purchase or they're already interacting with you, great opportunity to get them to give you and validate the right email that we should be sending to. And this is within your CRM. You could probably just do a quick update in that sense. What else do I have that I want to touch on here? The other thing to keep in mind is Apple will only show you opens for users that have a mail app actively running on their devices. So this is where, again, if you're able to connect the data sources and do have the visibility, know that yes, you might get a false open, but at least you, if anything, you know that there's that the person is, that email address is valid. So you don't want to indirectly purge and get rid of that subscriber email. Hey, it's still a valid email for you to use, not like a dummy account. Um, and then what? And then the other thing here that I have here is that I want to call out, and this is where I always like to say we get better as we get better at being marketers. Um, with this rollout, I know that Apple's intent was really to protect the subscribers. There may be that risk that, through this release, it may backfire with people in organizations. Essentially, what may actually happen is now we're going to be sending more unwanted, unpersonalized emails if we don't take these measures into place, getting people to unsubscribe from us. So this is where I want you to really put some time into your data segmentation and cleanup to really instill opportunities to engage with your customers. If you're kind of wondering, well, how do you do that? I'm actually jumping ahead here. The other thing here in terms of moving forward is actually tied to journey triggers for automated emails. So I touched on this loosely a couple of seconds ago. This is where you want to focus on revisiting your re-engagement strategies for any journeys that relies on the open rate. And the base for these journeys will have to adjust along with the criterias for how users qualify to enter the flow. So I know depending on some of the email workflows, there's always that option to select open rate as the qualifying factor of whether they go through, journey A or whether going through journey B. Well, here, this is the point when you review your strategy and you review your workflows, instead of maybe opens, you're now needing to change it to a click-through rate but then that's a good thing because you know that you're going to be focusing on that content strategy and you're trying to give more relevant content to your end users. Okay. And then the one thing I want to call out here, again, I mentioned it earlier, and it was always about that doing subject line testing. Well, with some of these false opens, that's going to skew how we interact. So instead of focusing on doing A/B testing on your subject lines, this is where you could do potentially more A/B tests on the type of content that you're driving and delivering to your customers, and really focus on that click-through rates and the conversion through that funnel that I talked about in the first bullet, connected to the actual metrics. So really start shifting how we what metric that we're looking at. But that shouldn't be, if you already have workflows on it, that shouldn't be a very big change. Just changing your the behavior action trigger. And I have two more here, and they're intertwined. So I have here trust and privacy. So most companies over the years have focused on creating privacy centers to comply with privacy rules, though we could take it a bit further and start to understand what our audience would like to hear from us, what they want to hear from us and how. So, especially, I know a number of you guys all just shouted out Canadian cities there a second ago. This was back in 2013 when Castle was rolling out. Most of us should have rolled out all these preference centers and going, hey, what do people want to engage, or giving them the option to opt in. This is where we could start taking it to the next level and asking them what type of information that they're looking to seek, and creating those categories so that we have more categories and ways to improve our content strategy to, again, connect and engage with our customers. And how I always like to see it, I did mention that my background was in Fin, but I also have worked in media. So I always like to think of it back in that sense. I look at all the content creator outlets like news, think of news, media companies or publishers, and they often have indicators to the type of content that they're sending to their audience to select from. So if you're kind of curious, like, how do I try to get more engaging content, or what type of categories, how should I position it? Though it's not one-to-one, put it in your own industry. And actually, what I want you to do is take a look at how they actually formulate these different content categories and enable people to select through it, so that when information is triggered to them, it's very targeted. It's exactly what they want. And what happens is that we end up focusing on a new metrics. And a new metrics I want to introduce is actually something called RFV. I don't know if many of you guys heard of it, but it's called recency, frequency, and volume. I think this is a great model because it really starts looking at amplifying your content and how your subscribers and your audience and your customers interact with it. So always take a look into that, what an RFB model looks like, and then look for opportunities to engage your customers. So whether it's taking your preference center that you've already created to the next level, now adding in additional ways to find out what they really want to hear from you, and or I know with your retail, even in some of the fins area, I do see this, you have profile centers or account management centers. Those are areas where, again, you just start gathering more information and connecting with your customers. So this becomes a natural segue to the fifth element, the fifth opportunity around improving relationships via relevant and engaging content. And just to kind of to validate what I had just said about this recency, frequency, volume model, I looked at a couple of reports, and so Accenture did one where they said 83% of consumers are willing to share their data to create more personalized experiences. 83%. So even though, yes, this report may have been done before this launch, but just think about it. If people trust your brand and they trust what you do with their data, even if they want to get more from you, they're probably going to give you the real email and a real way for your brand to connect with them versus a dummy account email that they've preset. Another number that I thought was very, very fascinating, this was done by Demand Gen Report, and they did like a buyer behavior study, and they were actually saying 76% of buyers expect more personalization and attention. So this is where that creating the updated profile or creating an updated preference center, enabling you guys to really build that relationship and know your customers. This is where if you're giving them what they want, they're most likely going to feed you more information too, because they want to make sure that they don't miss anything that's valuable. And then the last one that I thought, this was a report done on Epsilon. And it was showed that 80% of customers are more likely to make a purchase from a brand that provides a personalized experience. And again, this all comes back to that over time, you're building your trust factors, you're building your privacy, and really strengthening that you are using it for the purpose to help their customer needs. So as a marketer, I'm just going to slowly, I'm almost closing out here, but as a marketer, I believe we need to change our mindset. It's something like some people may view this to be a negative impact, but something good is coming out of this change. So don't view this as a negative change in how we work with our customer data and how we interact with it. I actually think it's designed and setting us up to do the greater good, to connect with our audience the way that they want to, and not making a lot of assumptions. So I know we're coming close to time, and some of you might be just wondering, well, what are the next steps? If I were you, there's really three that I would close out on. And one of them is really just starting with what I said before, asking those questions and understanding how many of your current users and subscribers are Apple audience users. So this is one thing. I know if you guys need some help with that, more than happy to connect with you guys. I put some contact information here, so do feel free to reach out, or feel free, I know a couple of our customers are on here, so feel free even to reach out to your engagement managers and also your tech consultants to get some support on, what does that look like in your current space. The other element I put here is connected to doing a health check assessment. This is where we could help you out in really doing a discovery to help identify all the different touch points and impacts that might be happening, identify what type of change requirements might be needed within your journeys. And then that really starts to level out, what type of work is required to put a plan into place to move forward. And then lastly, we're all about helping you guys understand and prioritize the impacts of the change. This is where we are able to have some conversations to go, there's a lot of things in the business that we are also focused on. This is only one element. So how do we put and prioritize and put a plan in place to make sure that we roll it out over the coming months?